The mines were alive with noise, the sound of metal on rock echoing in the endless dark. The air was thick with dust, and the heat made every breath heavy. The alien girl worked with her hands raw and bleeding. Her back bent under the weight of endless labor. She had no name here. Only a number burned into her skin to the overseers. She was not a person. She was a tool. The guards shouted orders from above. Their voices sharp like whips. Chains rattled whenever someone slowed down. The punishment was swift, and the girl had seen it many times. A mistake could mean hunger, or worse, a mistake could mean death. She kept her head low. Her eyes on the stone she was breaking. Every swing of her tool was the same. Endless, hopeless. Her body ached. But she did not stop. If she slowed down, they would notice, and she would suffer. It was better to stay invisible, but that day, something was different. Among the miners came a human. He was not dressed like the slaves, nor like the guards. His clothes were cleaner, his eyes brighter. He walked with the overseers at first. Studying the tunnels, the girl tried not to look, but she felt his presence. Like a spark in the darkness, when the human passed by, the girl's eyes lifted for just a moment. Their gaze met, only for a second. She expected to see the same cold judgment, the same cruel indifference. But instead, she saw something else. His eyes did not see a tool. They saw her. Her heart beat faster. She quickly looked down again, afraid. No one had ever looked at her that way before. Not here, not in the mines. The day dragged on, each moment heavy with silence. The human walked through the tunnels. Watching, listening, the guards treated him with respect, whispering that he was sent to improve efficiency. To the slaves, he was just another master, another chain. But the girl could not forget the way he had looked at her. Later, when the guards were distracted, the human moved closer. He crouched near where the girl worked. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Here, take this." She froze, not believing her ears. In his hand was a small flask of water, clean and cool. Her throat ached with thirst. She wanted it, but fear held her back. Accepting kindness could be dangerous. "Drink," he urged quietly. "No. No one will see." Her hands trembled as she took the flask. For the first time in years, she tasted real water, not the dirty liquid the guards gave. It felt like life itself pouring into her dry body. When she looked up again, the human gave a small nod. His expression was serious. But his eyes were kind. The girl's chest felt strange, as if something long dead inside her had stirred. She wanted to thank him, but words failed. She only nodded back, quickly hiding the flask under her rags. But someone had seen, from the shadows. A guard's eyes narrowed. He had noticed the brief exchange, his mouth twisted into a cruel smile. The girl did not know yet, but whispers had already begun. Some slaves had seen too, and their voices carried through the tunnels. The human? He gave her water. They murmured, "Why? Who is he?" The overseers would not like this. A human who treated a slave like a person was dangerous. Rules existed to keep the slaves broken. A spark of kindness could become a flame as the shift ended. The girl felt both fear and hope. She had lived her whole life unseen, unvalued, chained to the stone. But now, one look, one act, had changed everything. When she lay in the darkness of her cell that night, she thought of his eyes, the water, and the strange warmth in her chest. She did not understand it. She only knew that something had shifted. The mines no longer felt the same, and far away. The guard who had seen them whispered to another, that human. "He is not following the rules," he said with a cruel laugh. "We will make sure he remembers what happens to those who break them." The girl closed her eyes, unaware of the storm gathering around her, in the endless night of chains and stone. A single spark had been lit, and sparks, if not crushed, could burn the whole mine. The morning began with the same cruel rhythm. The slaves were dragged from their cells, shoved into the tunnels, and given their tools. The air was heavy with dust, and the sound of stone breaking filled every corner. The alien girl moved silently among them, her body weak, but her spirit somehow restless. She could not forget what had happened yesterday. The memory of the human giving her water was burned into her mind. It was such a small act, yet it felt like the greatest treasure she had ever received. No one had ever treated her like that, not even once. She tried to push it away, tried to believe it was just a mistake, but her heart would not let it go. She stole a glance around the mine, searching, and then she saw him. The human was back, walking slowly along the narrow path. His eyes were sharp, watching everything. But when they passed her, they softened. The girl quickly lowered her gaze. Fear battled against something new inside her. She did not know what this feeling was. It was not trust, not yet, but it was not fear alone. It was something warmer, something fragile. The guards barked their orders, reminding the slaves of their place. Work faster. No talking. Tools, not tongues. They shouted. The slaves bent lower, hiding their eyes. None dared to look up. But the human lingered near the girl again. He crouched, as if inspecting the rock she worked on. His voice came low. "Are you hurt?" She froze. The question was so strange, so impossible. Hurt was normal. Pain was life. No one asked if she was hurt. Not ever. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her throat was too dry. Her voice too broken. She only shook her head, even though her hands trembled from wounds. The human studied her carefully, his face unreadable to others, but she saw concern in his eyes. He reached out quickly, pretending to adjust the tool she was holding, and with that small movement, he slipped a piece of bread into her palm. Her heart leaped. Her eyes widened. It was real food, not the thin, dirty slop the guards gave. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. He whispered, "Eat when no one sees." Then he stood and walked away as if nothing had happened. The girl's hands clutched the bread tightly, hidden in her rags. She felt like it was fire. Too dangerous to hold, yet too precious to let go. But danger was already growing, not far away. The same guard from before watched with narrowed eyes. His suspicion turned sharper. His cruel smile returned. The hours passed slowly. The girl kept working, pretending nothing had happened. Her body screamed for rest. But inside, she felt a strange strength, just from knowing someone had cared. At the end of the shift, the slaves were herded back to their cages. The girl waited until the guards' backs were turned. Then she quickly pressed the bread to her lips. It was dry and rough, but to her, it tasted like hope. That night, lying in the darkness, she finally allowed herself to whisper words she had never dared to speak. "Why?" She murmured to the empty air. "Why would he help me?" Her heart beat faster at the memory of his eyes. Not like the overseers, not like the guards. His eyes did not see her as a tool. They saw her as a person. But fear was strong too. She knew the guards would not ignore this for long. Kindness was forbidden here. It was dangerous the next day. The whispers began among the slaves. They talked in secret when the guards could not hear. The human? He gave food, one muttered. Why would he risk it? Another shook his head. Maybe he is foolish. Maybe he will get us all punished. But one voice was different. An old slave whose eyes had seen much, he said quietly. Or maybe he remembers what we have forgotten, that we are still alive. Still people. The girl listened, her chest heavy with confusion. She wanted to believe. But hope was dangerous. Hope was a chain that cut deeper than iron when broken. Later, while she worked again, she felt the human's gaze. This time, he did not come close. He simply looked at her for a long moment. That was all. But it was enough to make her chest ache. far away, in the shadows. The guard tightened his grip on his whip. He leaned toward another and hissed, "This human thinks he can play hero. He will learn the price." The girl sensed something wrong. The air felt heavier, as if danger was creeping closer. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew this: her life was no longer the same. Because in the endless darkness of the mines where no one cared, a glimpse of kindness had been given, and sometimes a glimpse was enough to wake something that could never again be silenced. The mine never slept. The tunnels echoed with endless noise, pickaxes striking stone, chains rattling, and guards shouting. Yet beneath all that noise, another sound had begun, a softer one, a dangerous one: whispers. The slave spoke in hushed voices. When the guard's eyes were turned, the human's small acts had not gone unseen. First water, then bread, in a place where kindness was forbidden. Those acts were louder than any shout. Why would he help her? A slave whispered, sweat dripping down his face. "He must be foolish," another muttered. "He will only bring pain." But the old slave shook his head. "Or maybe he sees what we have forgotten, that we are still people." The girl heard the words as she swung her tool. Her body moved like always, tired and broken. But her mind was no longer quiet. She kept replaying the human's face. The strange way he looked at her, not as a tool, but as someone real. Fear battled against the warmth inside her. Fear told her to stay invisible, to survive. But the warmth whispered of something else: hope. And hope was more dangerous than any whip. That day, the human came again. He walked the tunnels with calm steps, pretending to study the walls. The guards believed he was checking the mine's efficiency, but the slaves watched with secret eyes. They had seen the truth. He was different when he passed by the girl. He slowed. His voice was soft, low enough only she could hear. "What is your name?" The words froze her in place. No one had ever asked her that before. To the guards, to the overseers, she was only a number. Her name had been buried long ago, forgotten under chains and stone. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Lyra." It felt strange, speaking it aloud, like digging up a part of herself she thought was lost. The human nodded slowly. "Lyra," he repeated, as if testing the sound, as if making sure it was real. Her chest tightened. She could not remember the last time someone had spoken her name. The sound was like a flame in the dark, small but alive, but not all eyes were blind. In the shadows, the same guard who had been watching clenched his fists. His suspicion turned to anger. This human was dangerous. Too much kindness could spread like fire, and fire in a mine was deadly. As the shift ended, the slaves returned to their cells. The whispers grew louder. "He asked her name." One said, "He treats her like she is one of us." "No," another argued. "He treats her like she is more." The guards grew restless too. They had seen the way the slaves looked at the human. Hope in their eyes was something they could not allow. Hope made slaves harder to break. Hope made them dangerous. That night, Lyra lay on the cold stone floor, her body aching, her hands raw, but her mind was wide awake. Her name echoed in her head, a name she thought no one would ever speak again. She touched the scar on her arm where her number was burned for the first time. It did not feel stronger than her name. The human had given her water, food, and now her name back. Each act was small, yet each was heavy with meaning, she felt. A strange fear for him now, fear that the guards would punish him, fear that his kindness would cost him everything. The next morning, her fear became real. The human walked into the mine, as always. But the guard who had been watching followed him closely. His eyes were sharp, filled with cruel intent. The slaves felt the tension in the air. They worked faster, heads down, pretending not to notice. But their ears were open, their hearts beat faster. Something was about to happen. The human stopped near Lyra again. He pretended to inspect her work. His voice low. "Be careful, Lyra. They are watching." Her breath. Caught, he knew the danger. He was not blind, yet he still came close. Still spoke her name. The guard's lips curled into a smile. He had heard enough. His voice cracked like a whip. "You?" He shouted, pointing at the human. The tunnels fell silent. Every pickaxe stilled. Every chain stopped rattling. The human turned slowly, calm but firm. The guard stepped closer, eyes burning with rage. "You think you are above the rules," he hissed, giving food, speaking names. "You forget where you are." Lyra's heart pounded. Her hands shook. She wanted to cry out, to warn him, but her voice was trapped in her throat. The other guards gathered, their faces cruel, ready for punishment. The slaves kept their heads down, too afraid to interfere. But inside, fear and hope twisted together. The guard raised his whip. "We will teach you what happens to those who break the order." He snarled. The human did not step back. His eyes met Lyra's across the darkness, calm, steady, unafraid. In that moment, she understood he had chosen this. He had chosen to see her, chosen to treat her as a person, even if it cost him everything. The whip cracked through the air. The sound echoed like thunder in the stone, and in the silence that followed, every slave knew something had begun that could never be undone. The crack of the whip split the air like lightning. The sound echoed through the tunnels, bouncing off stone walls. The slaves froze where they stood, their tools slipping from weak hands. No one dared to breathe too loud. The guard's arm rose. Again, the leather whip curling in his fist, his face twisted with cruel delight. This was not about punishment anymore. This was about power. The human stood still, his eyes locked on the guard, calm but unyielding. He did not beg, did not plead. Instead, he held his ground. His silence was louder than words. "On your knees." The guard shouted. Spit flew from his mouth. His voice carried the weight of command. The other guards stepped closer, ready to strike if he resisted. But the human remained standing. His voice was firm. "She has a name." A ripple passed through the slaves, their heads lifted, eyes widening. To speak such words here was madness. To call a slave a person was rebellion. The guard's face darkened with rage, with a roar. He lashed the whip across the human's back. The crack echoed like thunder. Blood streaked his shirt, but he did not fall. Lyra's hands trembled as she clutched her tool. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would break her chest. Fear chained her in place, yet something inside her screamed, "Do something." The guards struck again and again. The human staggered but kept his feet. His jaw clenched, his eyes steady. Every lash was meant to break him. But instead, it made him stronger. The slaves could not look away. For years, they had seen beatings. They had seen death. But this was different. This was defiance. This was fire. The old slave whispered, voice shaking. "He is not like them. He is not one of them." The overseer finally stepped forward, his voice cold enough. "Do not kill him, not yet." His eyes narrowed on the human. "You think you can change the order? You think these creatures are people?" The human's lips curled in a faint smile, despite the blood on them. "I know they are." Gasps spread through the tunnel. The words were too bold, too dangerous, but they sank deep into every listening heart. The overseer's eyes burned with fury. "Chain him," he ordered. The guards seized the human, dragging him to the wall. Iron cuffs clamped onto his wrists. Chains rattled as they locked him down. Blood dripped from his wounds, staining the stone. Lyra's breath came fast. Her chest felt tight. She had watched many suffer, many die. She had never moved, never spoken. Silence was survival. But now silence felt heavier than chains. That night, when the slaves were shoved back into their cells, she lay on the cold ground, her body aching, but her mind burning. The image of the human standing tall under the whip would not leave her. She whispered his words to herself. She has a name, each time she repeated it. Her chest tightened. A name, her name Lyra. The next day, the guards forced her and the others back into the tunnels. The human was still chained to the wall, his back torn, his body weak, but his eyes were alive. He looked at her as she passed, and in that look was no regret. Only fire. Lyra's hands shook as she worked. She wanted to speak, to ask why, but the guards were everywhere, watching, waiting. Hours dragged like years. And then, when the noise of the mine drowned their voices, she dared to whisper, "Why?" His lips curved in a faint smile. His voice was raw, broken, but clear. "Because you are more than they say." Her throat tightened. She turned quickly, hiding her face, if the guards heard. Both of them would suffer worse, but already, the guards were planning. The one who had beaten him whispered to the overseer, "We should make an example of him. The slaves are watching. They must see what happens to those who rebel." The overseer nodded slowly, his voice cold. "Tomorrow." In front of them all, when the shift ended and the slaves were pushed back into cages. The whispers spread again. "They will break him." One said, "No one can survive it," but another voice, shaky yet firm, answered, "He did not break today." Lyra sat in her cell. Her hands wrapped around her knees. Her mind was torn. Apart, she was only a slave, a tool. She had no power, no freedom. Yet when she closed her eyes, she saw him, bleeding but unbroken. His words echoed louder than the overseer's threats. "Because you are more than they say." For the first time, Lyra felt a decision forming in her chest. A dangerous one, a forbidden one. She could not stay silent anymore. The next day, when the guards dragged the human into the center of the tunnel for punishment, the slaves were forced to gather. Chains rattled as they watched. Fear weighed heavy in the air. The overseer raised his hand. "This human will learn his place," he declared. His words echoed like stone. But before the whip fell, before the chains tightened further, Lyra's lips parted. A whisper escaped. Trembling but real. "Stop." The word was small, almost lost in the noise, yet it carried. Every slave heard. Every guard froze. The overseer's eyes snapped to her, cold and sharp. "What did you say?" Her heart hammered like a drum. She could not take it back now. She met the human's eyes. And in them, she saw fire, strength, and something more. She swallowed hard, her voice stronger. This time, "Stop." The tunnel went silent, and in that silence, everything began to change. The night was darker than usual. The tunnel smelled of damp stone and sweat. The slaves lay in their cells, exhausted and afraid. But Lyra could not sleep. Her mind was alive with a dangerous thought. The human's chains rattled softly nearby, each clink a reminder of what the guards wanted. They wanted obedience, fear, silence. Yet he had not bowed, not even once. His defiance had lit a spark inside her. She crept closer, careful not to wake the others. Her heart pounded with fear. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound made her flinch. "Lyra," he whispered when she reached him. His voice was low, hoarse from the beatings. "You shouldn't be here." "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, her voice shaking. I want to help." He studied her face, and for a moment she thought he would refuse. Then he nodded. Slowly, "Then you must be careful. The guards are watching, and one wrong step—" "I know," she interrupted. "I've watched them for years. I know their ways. I know their patterns." He tilted his head, curious. "You know the tunnels better than anyone." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I've survived here." I've seen paths they do not notice, hidden corners, cracks in the walls. I can get us out." His eyes softened slightly. Then we might have a chance, for the first time in her life. Lyra felt purpose, not just survival, not just hiding, but a dangerous, thrilling plan that could change everything. They waited until the guards were distracted. The echo of voices and chains masking their small movements. Lyra led him through hidden corners of the tunnels, her fingers brushing over walls, feeling every crack, every dip, every secret path known only to the slaves. "Do you think we can make it?" she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "We have to try," he replied. "I cannot leave you here, not like this." Their steps were careful, slow, measured, yet every corner held danger. A guard's shadow, the sharp scrape of metal, the soft thud of a patrol. Each sound made Lyra's heart race. Hours seemed to stretch like days. Each tunnel looked the same. Endless stone and darkness. Lyra's hands ached. Her body was tired. But she pushed forward, her mind fixed on freedom. Finally, they reached a narrow crevice, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Lyra paused. "This leads to the surface," she whispered, "but the exit is guarded. Soldiers patrol above. We must wait for the right moment." He nodded. "Then we wait. Together." The two crouched in the dark, hidden by shadows, their hearts beating in rhythm. Every sound of the mine above made them flinch. Every distant shout made them hold their breath. Minutes turned to hours, and the cold seeped into their bones. Yet they stayed, silent and still, waiting for the right time to move. Then, faintly, a whistle carried through the tunnels, a code only Lyra recognized. A guard had changed shifts. Distracted by something above, their moment had come. They moved. Quickly, silently, slipping through the crevice. The outside world smelled different: wet earth, cool air, freedom in its simplest form. But danger was still close. Soldiers patrolled the surface, their steps heavy, their voices sharp. Lyra led him through hidden paths above ground. Her knowledge of the terrain, a secret map, etched into her memory. Every step was a risk. Every rustle of leaves could bring discovery. Suddenly, a shout pierced the night. "There! Stop them!" The soldiers had noticed something. Their voices grew louder, footsteps pounding toward them. The human grabbed her hand, his grip firm. "Run!" He shouted, and she ran, her legs burning, her lungs screaming. Adrenaline surged like fire through her veins. They darted through underbrush, climbed over rocks, and slipped into shadowed hollows. Behind them, the guards' voices grew fainter. Yet the danger had not passed. Every step forward was a battle. Every breath a victory. Finally, they paused in a hidden cave, hearts pounding, soaked in sweat and dirt. She looked at him, her eyes wide. We made it this far," she whispered. He nodded, his face bloodied, bruised, but alive. "Yes. But the real danger is still ahead. We must be careful. They will come looking, and not all will be as forgiving as tonight." Lyra swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "I know, but I will not go back. Not now. Not ever." The two sat in silence for a long moment, listening to the distant sounds of the mine, the faint shouts of guards, the soft rustle of the wind through rocks. Every shadow felt alive, every sound a reminder of the cost of freedom. And yet, despite the fear, Lyra felt something she had never known before: hope, fragile and flickering, but alive, and for the first time she believed that escape was possible. Little did they know, far above in the tunnels, a pair of eyes watched them from the darkness. Hidden and silent, a traitor among the slaves had followed their path, and the news of their escape would spread faster than they imagined. Their freedom was not yet certain, and the mine, with all its darkness and stone, still held secrets that could end them both. The night air was thick with tension. Every shadow a potential danger. Lyra and the human moved quickly, their feet silent against the rocky ground. Behind them, the guards were not far, their shouts cutting through the darkness like knives. The forest above the mine was strange and wild, a place of twisted trees, tangled roots, and sudden drops. But Lyra knew it well. Hidden paths and secret hollows known only to those who had lived here in chains. She led the human with steady hands, whispering directions. Left here. Crouch. Now, his arm supported her when she stumbled over a hidden root. His eyes scanning for danger. We can't stop, he said, breathless, his voice firm. They will catch us if we do. They ran through shadows, slipping between trees, ducking. Under low branches, their hearts pounded in unison, each step echoing like a drum. The night was alive with noises, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, every sound a warning. Lyra glanced behind, her chest tightening. A group of guards was closing fast, their lanterns casting eerie beams of light. We have to split, she whispered, her voice sharp, trembling. The human hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, it's the only way, she insisted, pushing him toward a narrow gap in the rocks. A path too small for soldiers, but just wide enough for two. They slipped. Through hearts racing, adrenaline burning, the guards shouted in frustration as they lost sight of their prey. Over here. Don't let them escape. Their lanterns swung wildly, casting moving shadows over the forest floor. Lyra led the human through a hidden hollow. A small stream trickling beside it. The water was cold, wetting their feet, but they did not stop. To complain, every step mattered, every second counted. Suddenly, a snap of a branch echoed behind them. Both froze, hearts pounding. Lyra pressed herself into the shadows. The human crouched beside her, silent, listening. A soldier's voice called. Out, I heard something. Over there. The shadows seemed to close in, and the forest felt alive. Watching, waiting. Lyra's mind raced. She had escaped the tunnels before, but never like this. Never with a human. Never with so much at stake. She gripped his hand tightly. We can't go back, no matter what. They continued running, winding through the dense forest. The path became steeper, rocks cutting into their palms, branches scraping their faces, but the human kept up, his strength impressive despite his injuries. They reached a small cliff overlooking the valley below. The moonlight revealed the open land, a place they had never seen from the tunnels. Freedom felt close, almost within reach, but the guards' lanterns glinted from the tree line below. Still searching, still hunting. Lyra looked at him, fear and determination burning in her eyes. We jump, she said. We have no choice. The human studied the cliff, then nodded, placing his hand over hers. Together, he said, and they leaped, landing in the tall grass below with a painful thud, rolling to break the impact. The earth soft beneath them. They lay still for a moment, catching their breath. The grass whispered around them, hiding them from sight. The guards were still above, shouting, frustrated, but unable to see them. Lyra felt the first real sense of hope since she had been a child. Beaten and chained. This was freedom, or at least the first step toward it. But hope was fragile, easily shattered by a single mistake. They moved quickly through the valley, keeping low, avoiding the patrols, hiding whenever a soldier passed too close. Lyra's mind worked fast, mapping the safest path to the rebel camp she had heard about in whispers. A place rumored to harbor both humans and escaped slaves. Ours. Past the cold seeping into their bones, the human leaned on her for support. You are stronger than you look, he said, a hint of a smile breaking through the dirt and blood. She shook her head. No. I learned from surviving, not strength. They crouched behind a large boulder, trying to rest, their breaths visible in the night, the tension heavy. The sound of footsteps in the distance made them freeze. Every sense alert, every muscle tense. A shadow moved closer, but it was not a soldier. It was a smaller figure, crouching, hiding, whispering, "You too are being followed." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" She whispered urgently. The figure's face was hidden, but the warning was clear. "The mine. They know you escaped. And more are coming." Panic surged, but Lyra swallowed it down. She looked at the human, his face grim. "We have to move," he said, "now, before they catch us." They slipped into the night, running through shadows once more. Every step a gamble, every breath a risk, and far above, the guards in the forest cursed their prey, unaware that a spark of defiance had grown into a fire that could not be stopped. The rebels' camp smelled of smoke and sweat. The air was thick with fear and the sharp stank of burning wood. Lyra and the human arrived just as dawn broke, their bodies bruised and bleeding. Their journey through the forest had left mark scratches on her arms, his back still raw from the beating. The camp was crowded with humans and escaped slaves, all armed with makeshift weapons, eyes wary and suspicious. Lyra felt every gaze on her, whispering words she could not hear. The human stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "We need help. They are chasing us." A tall woman with a scar across her cheek stepped forward, her eyes cold. "Why should we help you? You are strangers." And her gaze fell on Lyra. "She is a mine slave." Lyra's chest tightened every step. A freedom had been hard won, yet here she was treated like nothing, like she did not matter. But the human stood beside her, his hand lightly on her shoulder. "She is more than that," he said firmly, "and if you do not help, the guards will come for all of you next." The woman studied them for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Very well, but prove yourselves, and quickly." They were led to a small clearing, a training ground of sorts, where they were given simple weapons and tasks. The human had fought before, but Lyra had only survived. She watched him, trying to learn, her hands shaking as she held a short blade. Hours passed, and the training turned into preparation. "The guards will not stop," the woman said. "They will hunt you like animals. You need to fight or die." Lyra's hands tightened around the weapon. She thought of the tunnels, the chains, the beatings. And then she thought of him, standing tall even when his back was cut open. His defiance had given her fire, and now she had to protect it. When the sun dipped low, the camp grew tense. Scouts reported movement in the distance. The guards were coming. Larger numbers than anyone had expected. Lanterns flickered like distant stars, and the sound of their march was a drumbeat of fear. The human turned to Lyra, his eyes serious. "We need to lead them into the trap, but stay close to me. No mistakes." She nodded, fear twisting into determination. The rebels moved into position, hiding behind rocks and trees. Every shadow a shield, every heartbeat a warning. The guards arrived just as night fell, their torches lighting the camp. In harsh orange, shouts and commands filled the air. But the rebels waited, silent and ready. The first shots were fired, arrows whistling through the night. Hitting shields and legs, panic spread among the guards, and chaos began. Lyra ducked behind a boulder, her weapon raised. Her hands trembled, but she aimed. She struck a guard who came too close. The man fell with a grunt, and her breath caught in her throat. The human fought beside her, blades flashing, his strength surprising her even in his weakened state. He moved with precision, striking guards down, protecting Lyra, giving her space to fight. The camp erupted into battle, flames rising as fires from torches spread. Smoke filled the air, stinging eyes and choking lungs. Lyra's hands were raw, her arms scraped and bleeding, but she did not stop. Every strike a step toward freedom. Every movement a declaration that she was no longer a tool. The rebels cheered as more guards fell, their formations breaking. Confusion and fear spread through the enemy ranks. The human and Lyra led the charge. Moving through shadows, cutting paths, their combined courage inspiring the others. Suddenly, a guard lunged at Lyra from the side. She stumbled, her heart racing. But the human caught her, pushing her out of harm's way. His back was bleeding, his breathing ragged. Yet he grinned through the pain. "You can do this," he shouted. She steadied herself. Rage and determination blending into one, she struck. With all her strength, knocking the guard away, the battle raged around them, a storm of fire. Blood and defiance. Finally, after what felt like hours, the guards began to retreat, their lanterns flickering up. Their numbers thinned. Chaos reigned. But the camp was still standing. Lyra and the human at its center, bruised and exhausted. But victorious, Lyra dropped to her knees, panting, her hands covered in dirt and blood. She looked at him, her eyes wide. We did it," she whispered. He smiled faintly, supporting himself against a tree. "No. We survived this fight." But the war is not over. Far above, on a distant ridge, more soldiers watched the smoke and the fires and whispered, "They have escaped, but they will not last long. We will hunt them down." Lyra looked around the camp, the rebels cheering, firelight flickering on their faces. And she realized something she had never known. Freedom was dangerous. Freedom was painful. But it was alive, and she knew, in her heart, that she would never let it go.